All right, well, we're starting to paint the room in here. This is the pool room. Got all the electrical stuff for the solar panels and the boards and stuff like that, and the batteries down here. So I just want to finish this room up so that I can put the, well, first of all, there's another board going to go here for electrics on this wall. And then over here on this far wall is where I normally keep all the pool supplies. I've got like a shelf thing that goes here, and then behind me I put all like the table and chairs and stuff like that. And right now I'm just having a mess of a time in the garage trying to get, getting ready to do any kind of work. So if I clean this room out, I've got this nice big space to store stuff and just to kind of tidy up the garage a bit. So hopefully we can, and I'm not doing a great job in here, don't judge me. I'm not going to do the doors, and there's a section over here where the cables come in, and then where the pipes come in at the bottom that I'm not going to worry about right now, and this is a bit of a rough wall, but as long as I have a few places to patch up and then do localized painting, it's good enough. I also want to do the floor in here, so I'm going to paint it. It's kind of like a beigey gray or something like that. We got some concrete paint, we're going to put it down, and hopefully that'll clean this floor up a bit, make it look a little nicer. And then, yeah, it'll also help make it look a lot brighter in here, because this was obviously it used to be a dark room in here. So it's already just from doing this, one wall and starting to do a bit more, it has made a big difference in here and having that light in there. A lot of these cables are going to be, not the ones particularly over here, but a lot of the ceiling cables and the light cable, the ones that go to the other rooms, they're all getting swapped out anyways. So I'm going to do a bit of a rough paint around them. And then I'll just have to come back in the end and just, when I put the new conduit in or the new holes or whatever I'm doing, I'll clean it up at that point. But yeah, at least this gets me moving, gets stuff out of the way, clears out the garage, and makes this room a little nicer. And then it'll be on to doing the electrics. So let's get to it. Got a whole bunch of taping to do, which is not fun. I don't want to cover all this up in paint. So anyways, let's get to it. So we got a couple sets of paint here. We got some primer, which is kind of expensive, and we got this French paint, which is super cheap. So what I'm going to try to do is see if I can get away with one coat of primer, and then use if it'll cover with this cheap paint, as it's it saves a bunch of money. So let's see what this looks like. It's been sitting since last fall, or since I did the utility room with the water heater in it. So let's see how we do with this one. I'm hoping it covers. Even if you have to do 2 coats, it'd still end up being cheaper than using the expensive primer. French paint is notoriously bad. I mean, I'm sure they must do okay with it, but I think this is just a latex, which I know in an old home you should be using, chalk paint and whatnot, but we're probably not going to, because we're going to have so much control over the humidity in the house with all the AC units. So we're going to take that chance. And the walls, half the walls have got gypsum on them anyways. Yeah, I'm not totally sold on this paint, but it is super cheap. Well, relatively. So I'm going to do a little square over here. Well, pretty big square. And I'm going to hope that it's enough for 2 coats of this will cover it. So I'll put this on today. Not really blown away by it, but let's see. I didn't add any water to this. Nothing at all. It's just paint out of the tub. Not so good. Because this part here I've already given it 3 coats of the primer just to get to this point. It's just really expensive paint, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Well, it's been about a week or so, maybe 2 weeks. Basically, I was starting to paint this wall here, as you saw, and I just kept thinking about the amount of coats it was going to take, and me going up and down the ladder, and moving scaffolding, and doing all this stuff. So we kind of decided, because it's such a big house and I've got so much to do, so many walls, that we invested in one of these. So it's a sprayer thing. Basically, it sucks the paint out, run it through like a mesh. So I've got a bucket here that you have a strainer on it. You strain all the lumps and stuff out of the paint, and then you put the bottom of this thing in like a suction thing, and it sucks the paint out, and you use a gun and you spray it, and it's supposed to be a lot faster. You have to spend a lot more time taping, covering stuff. But because most of our rooms are going to be, they're not really furnished or anything, we've got so many square meters of walls to do. This also can use less paint. We kind of decided it was worth the investment. I have some long extender things. So like in this room, for example, and the rest of the house, I can use the gun and like do the ceilings without going up a ladder. And then I have like a pivoting thing that allows you to kind of set the angle. So, because the whole idea is you want it to be straight onto the wall when it sprays as much as possible. You're going to go up and down a little bit. So anyways, that's the idea. Got my bucket. I got a bucket of water. I got a mask. Same mask I've been using. Got some goggles. I'll put just an old paint shirt. I've got some paint pants on and stuff like that. And then for the masking, I've found we had a whole bunch of tape, which was the paper-based packing tape. So I'm going to do that, especially in here. And then Sam bought a bunch of garbage bags that we really don't like. They're super thin. They're huge. They're like, I don't know, they're massive bags. But because it's so thin, they're not very useful. So what I'm going to do in here is, put a bag over this, put a bag over the battery, all this stuff. Instead of using plastic, we might as well use it up. And then maybe over the window, just so I don't get too much paint on the windows real quickly. But yeah, that's the idea. I'm going to paint up, or I'm going to mask up in here and cover everything as much as I can. And then hopefully I can get through, well, they say you can get through as quick as the paint dries, and this paint dries in about 2 hours. Because it's being sprayed on, it dries a lot faster because it's a much thinner layer. And then eventually, when you get better at it, it'll be a much smoother coat than if you roll it on or paint it on. So fingers crossed it works. Got a good room to test it in. And then other than going on the ladder, the step ladder, to put the tape and stuff up, I should be able to paint this whole room without going on a ladder at all. So that would be great. The floor, we have the paint for the floor. As I said, I found out I'm going to have to basically sand the floor. So I've got one of those like a rolly brush thing that you run along. So I'll be able to just do this in here, and then I'll just do a little orbital sander on the edges, and that should help the paint stick. And then you vacuum it all up. And then you use TSP, like trisodium phosphate, I think it is, which is like a super strong soap to clean all the floor, get all the oils and all the residue off and stuff like that. And then I should be able to just paint the floor in a couple coats in a day, hopefully. Maybe we'll get to it tomorrow. We'll see how well this goes. But yeah, like it's apparently I can do this whole room in like half an hour, whereas before what you can see now, which was a mess, took me about 4 hours, 5 hours just to get what this is. So we'll see. Fingers crossed this wasn't a mistake, but yeah, with as much as we have to do, I think it made sense as an investment. So let's get to it. Let's start seeing what's in here and what it looks like. Alrighty, let's open this box up and see what we got inside. I've never used one of these before, so I'm sure there's going to be a bit of a learning curve. I've been watching my YouTube videos. Okay. I have a box that I think is empty. I don't think there's anything in there. More protective box. I should be able to pull it out. Most of it's be attached. Oh, there we go. So this is the thing that goes into the paint. So it sucks up through here, and if you're not using it, it spits it out back into there, into the same container, rotates it around, all that. And then you basically put it one way to prime it, and that's where the nozzle goes on for the sprayer. And this thing kind of does something, I forget what it does, to kind of prime it up. And then I think there's a place on top. There's the hose. And I think this is all the accessories. That's it. And the box is empty. It's a little filter thing you put on the bottom here to stop it, or to keep it sucking properly. Like that. And you take that off and wash it. And that's the gun. This, I believe, are the filters you use. There's different types, and I'm not sure. And these are the nozzles, and you have two types. One of them, I believe, this one is a 30-degree angle, like that, and then it's 11 is the amount of paint that comes out of it. And then this one is like a 50-degree angle, and this is a 17, so I think it means it's got a bigger hole in it, and it allows more paint through. So wider angle, more paint. And then this one I think you use for a trim. I'm not sure though. And then this one you use for kind of water-based paints. Maybe this is an oil one, I'm not sure. Yeah, I know I'm going to use this one for this room, because we're not really doing any trim anyways, so. And then in here, you're supposed to be able to store all this stuff. And then there's two little lids you put on it. Not sure which way they go, if it matters. I don't think it matters. That went in well there. There you go. You keep all your filters. Possibly even your instructions in there, I don't know. And then this holds the filter. You undo this, and there's another filter in there, which is the one I want. And then that goes up through here, like that. And then the hose attaches to there and goes into this part. And then depending on which way you want to paint, if you're going up and down, you do this direction. If you're going sideways, you do that direction. And then the nozzles just slide in the top or bottom, I believe. All I would use, I think you put it in like that. Not sure yet. I think you have to loosen it. There that goes, and then you tighten that up. You can still kind of move that around, and then depending on, you want the arrow to face forward, like that. And then if you want to blow kind of some paint out, you would twist it backwards, and it does a straight stream instead of spraying. So there's like a squirt, like a water fountain, not like a water fountain, but you know, like a stream of water versus, or paint versus a spray. It doesn't actually shoot through the green part, it shoots through the center of this. This is just an indicator, which is a bit weird, but that's cool. And I think that's kind of universal how all these work. So what you do in most cases is, instead of getting this all spray painted over, is you can put this in like 3 rooms over, right? So we would have this, I would put this in the hallway in our place, and then I could walk into each room, do the whole room, and then walk out and do the whole next room, that kind of thing. So it's a long hose, which I hope nicely goes around this. I'm not quite sure yet. Oh, look at that. There's one here for the extension cord as well for the power. And then if you're dealing with water-based paint, like a latex, you can just wipe this off. And then what the idea is, once you're done, you take the gun and you put this, you pick the whole thing up from the paint bucket. After you drain the paint out, you can basically drain it, put water into most of the system, and it goes through all the pipes and all the hoses, and you spray it back into your paint bucket. And then when that comes out, and it comes out as a bit of water, you stop, and then you just flush the whole thing out with water. You don't waste all the paint and all those lines and all this stuff. And then afterwards, you take the hose off, you take this hose off, You take especially the gun, you take that off once you run a lot of water through it, and then you can kind of tidy that all up and clean it. This one is best to do in like a sink or something like that, or with a hose. So yeah, I think what I do next is I'm going to tape everything up, finish putting this together, and let's give it some testing. See how we do. And the bucket is too big, of course. Ridiculous. Ugh, pain in the butt. So, from what I understand, for this one, you rotate if you want to come out the gun, you can have it facing either that way or that way. If you want it to go in and out of the bucket with the paint and kind of charge it up, then you go either up or down or up. So for right now, what we'd want to do is try to prime this. And then when you go to prime it, you want to put it on 1. So let's give that a go, and hopefully nothing bad happens. Whoops, it almost happened because I didn't put these on. So let's put these clips back on. I'm just going to run some water through it. It just chugs away and puts paint out. Anyways, that's enough fun. Let's get to taping everything up. Well, I have everything all taped up. I have the solar panel stuff. For the most part, there's a little bit on the edge here that I'm just going to put a piece of cardboard and spray as I go along kind of thing, or tape it temporarily on there just so it doesn't get sucked into the fans. I got all the pool stuff covered up over here. I got all the piping for the most part or not piping, but trunking, cables and things taped up. The ones are going to stay. I just have the light to do left. I'm going to put that in a bag, some sort of plastic bag or saran wrap or something, maybe even the garbage bag that we've been using. And I'll use a work light to kind of show where I'm going, hopefully. But I'm not going to do it today. I'm not going to paint today because it's already reached 3 p.m. Sam's in the hospital for an operation. Luckily, one of our lovely friends has taken her and is sitting with her. She's still waiting to go in, which is a bit weird because they're normally quite quick in France. But anyway, so I've not been as fast as I hoped, and I think it makes more sense for me just to do it tomorrow. It's still going to be reasonably good weather tomorrow, like 17. Today was lovely. It was 21. And I think I can just power through and get probably all 3 or 4 coats done tomorrow if I get up quite early and just go, right? Like it's start at like 8 o'clock. And then it's about a 2-hour wait, I think, between coats. And then we'll see how that works out. Well, good morning. It's the next day, and we're going to try to tackle this room. First time ever using a sprayer. I added the extra extension that we had purchased for the gun because I realized afterwards that this ceiling and the garage is so much taller than the rest of the house. It didn't really dawn on me until I was like, I can't reach this. So, got the extension on. I've got a little stool thing here that I'm going to shuffle around while I'm spraying. I can just reach, I think, but we'll see in a bit. What I'm going to start to do first is I'm going to pour some paint into this, quite a bit, strain it out, give this a bit of a rinse in the bucket of water, the strainer, and then get starting on this. One thing I'm going to do, I didn't tape all the edges on the bottom of the floor because I'm going to be sanding this down. I'm going to be putting a resin paint on this. I'm not going to be too fussy about it. Plus, once again, it's a pool room. I don't really care. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and take a piece of cardboard. This is how little I really care. And then just, as I go along, stick it like that. It's good enough. You know, there's a little bit overspray because I'm going to be taking a hand sander, an orbital sander, and going around the edges anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. Anyways, that's the plan. A little nervous. I got my gloves. I got my respirator thingy. I've got some glasses. So yeah, I guess let's get to it. Let's fill this up with some paint. I'm going to have to buy smaller buckets. I realized afterwards that they're too big for fitting under the unit, which was the brightest, but that's what one of the AIs recommended me, which was wrong. So always check your AI. Yeah, let's get to this. It's a very warm day today. Well, not very warm, but it's going to be going up to 17 or 18, which isn't bad for March. And it's supposed to get really, really windy, like 50-kilometer-hour winds overnight, but it's just kind of starting to get a little bit breezy. So I think I have some time. Hopefully I can do 2 or 3 coats today. I'll certainly get this and another one done. It'd be fantastic to be done today because I'd like to get the pool pump turned on, which has been off for a couple days. That's the plan anyways. We'll see. Let's get going and pouring this. Stuff's pretty old, but it worked, I don't know, a few months ago. Let's just pour it in. Try it there and we'll look at the pattern because there's an important thing you have to do looking at the pattern. If I've got it right, it'll be an even coverage and there'll be no kind of waviness. So let's try that. What is this shit? interesting stuff. All right, so my first evaluation is, it's really good. I obviously don't know what I'm doing with it yet, but the amount of time that took me, if I actually had some paint in the bucket, I could have done this in 20 minutes. And I've got a lot of blobs and stuff stuck on the wall, which I don't really care about right now. What you could do is you could roll over it and kind of smooth it out a bit and then kind of just touch it up again with the sprayer. But for this room, as long as it's white, I don't really care. But yeah, it's that whole section that would have taken me. And the way the paint's going on too, it's going on so evenly, like because it's a bit of a texture to it, it just blows right in. It's like, it will be once I get used to using it and handling it the right way and doing that sort of stuff, it's going to be really good. So I think we did a good call on this. You can see just how rough all the walls are. Don't tell anyone, but yeah, they're pretty bad. I didn't intend them to be anything more than that. Yeah, so let's just fill some more paint in there and see if I can finish her off for the next bit. I think I'm going to get away with like 2 coats. It's primer on everywhere and then do a coat of the other paint and I'm like done, which is insane. So, not bad. I'd recommend one. If you have a big room, a lot of big rooms to do, this is going to save us a lot. So anyways, let's get to it. Well, I've got the first coat on for the primer. A little bit runny, there's some streaks and stuff. Getting kind of used to the gun. It's not the easiest to do for the first go, but I wasn't exactly being very careful with it, if that makes sense. I was just trying to see how it all works. So I think if I wasn't being quite as going into corners and going around all the boxes and the solar stuff, and I was just doing straight walls, I could get really quite efficient with it. Plus some of these walls, because they've had different levels of coverage, I was kind of putting a little extra here and extra there. But anyways, it's good enough for in here. Yeah, let's go. I've spent a couple hours, so let's try putting on another coat of paint and see how we do, which will be the final coat, which we have a lot more of, and it's much cheaper, so I'm going to do that. Let's get to it. Well, good morning. It's been a couple days. Towards the end of the last painting session, I kind of ran into something really weird, and I didn't really notice because I had my goggles on and they were all kind of painty, and I was kind of getting into it. I think it's a combination of a bunch of things, but what happened is the paint went on really thick. It was supposed to be like a mist, and what it's done is it's kind of run down the walls, so it looks like, dripping icing or something. If you look carefully, you can kind of see the texture on this with the light going sideways. But anyways, we are in a pool room. I'm not going to worry about sanding it down and fixing it. So I'm doing this room first. I think I was too close at points. I went over things twice by mistake, and I was just kind of getting a bit confused because I was rushing. And it also went through a ton of paint. I didn't think it would go through a whole tub, and it did. So I actually kind of ran out in spots up there. So we've got another thing of paint. I'm going to dilute it by 10%. Give it another go today. We have a different brand of paint. It was super cheap from Aldi. So we'll see if that works. Hopefully it does. And let's give it another go. One more coat for everything, and then I'm just that's it. That's good enough. Just got to be white walls. And then I can start clearing out the garage, putting things back in here, and get working on other stuff, which is what the goal of this is. And that's why I'm trying to get through it quickly. Oh, another thing that I know that I'm doing wrong now is because this is such a high ceiling, I really should be a little higher up. So I'm going to get the stapler out and kind of move that along instead of going on the little step stool thing. I think that was a mistake, because you really should only be about that far away from the wall. And sometimes I'm getting out to here. Sometimes I'm getting too close. So once again, it's just kind of getting used to doing that motion where you're keeping it as parallel or as straight on as possible. It's not always possible. And then keeping your distance the same all the way up. You can kind of see because the band gets wider and thinner as you go along. But anyways, still learning. I'm not going to freak out too much about it. I obviously will be doing a much better job when you get in the house. Well, it's the next morning. Everything's dry in here. It dried really quickly like I expect it to. It looks a lot better than I thought it would. If I look on the sides of things and kind of look at the glancing angle, I can see where the streaks have kind of gone down and stuff like that. But I'm overall very happy with it. Well, good morning. I'm continuing on with painting this pool room here. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to remove the sand filter, the pump, and obviously the chemicals here. And then I'm going to try to tie up all the hoses and electrical stuff and all these things and zip tie them and get them as much as I can off the ground so that I can vacuum and sand and paint underneath them. Yeah, that's kind of what's on the agenda for now. And then we're going to get to sanding. So let's get to it. Well, I'm not sure you can see it, but over here you can have example of how the paint just ran down, didn't stick to the primer at all, and just kind of pooled here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut on the edge and then try to scrape it up on the floor before I do the sander thing for the whole surface. And then I can give it a good clean and hopefully paint. Maybe not paint today, but we'll see how it goes. Well, I'm going to start doing this sandy thing with the wire brush. I did a little test over there, and I don't know if I'm going to be getting all the paint off. But what I'm going to do is just give it a good pass and see how much will come up. Maybe there's spots that come up more than others. The whole idea, I think, is basically to get a smooth, not a smooth, but a surface that it's going to adhere to. So as you can see here, there's this section certainly took off all the dirt and grime, which is great. It didn't take all the paint off, so I'm going to take a little more time. I'm going to scrape in my hand and see if this stuff comes off a little better. But yeah, see what we can do. Worst case, it comes up, right? It's not the end of the world. So, but anyways, let's get to it and see what we can get done. Well, I've given everything a pretty good vac, at least for this first start. So what I'm going to do now is use some trisodium sulfate, which is sort of like a super heavy duty dish detergent. And basically you need gloves and a brush. And I'm going to go and scrub the whole floor as good as I can, do all the edges and work my way out. And hopefully that'll be good enough to make it stick. Let's go for it. Well, there we go. That's the end of that. I've done a couple rinses and the TSP and stuff like that. It's gonna take a couple days for it to dry. It's gotta be really, really dry, so I don't wanna rush it. So I'm gonna keep the room empty for while I can. And yeah. Certainly a lot cleaner, that's for sure. Nothing comes out of my hands. I'll give it another vac when before I actually paint it, but yeah. Hopefully the stuff will stick to it. There's like no slipperiness to it. It's very rough, like it feels like rubber the way it's doing. So yeah, that would be good. Anyways, get back to you when I start painting. Alrighty, next up I've got to do is I've got to tape all around the bottoms and get ready to do some painting today. Let's just get on to that. Well, good morning. So we're going to tempt the first coat of this resin concrete paint for the pool room. So what you have to do is you have to mix a hardener, or like I think it's called a hardener, with the actual color of the paint. And it should be measured by weight, but we don't have a scale, like a kitchen scale. I think we do somewhere, but it's in some box, and if I were to use it, same would probably kill me. So yeah, after thinking about it, consulting and whatnot, you can do it with sticks. So I know the exact value of each of these tubs because they put the actual kilograms on there. So assuming that I take half of the hardener and half of this, because I'm looking for 2 coats, you should be able to mix them equally and we're good. So to know what's the half, basically you take the lid off of this one. I'll do this one first. You go kind of dead center, as long as it's fairly even. We're in fairly even ground. So measure where the top is, you mark it, and then get a tape measure and mark the middle of it, and that will give you half. And then you pour it. Keep checking as you pour until you get this can halfway down. And you do the exact same thing with this. This should be fairly even, so if I see it hitting the numbers is correct, but I'm going to use a stick just in case, just to make sure. I'll do the exact same process with a marker. And then once I'm empty this pouch out, I'll saran wrap this, and it should last 24, 48 hours. It should last actually quite a while if I wrap it quite well. And then tomorrow morning, because I'm about 11 a.m. right now, get up, I'll do another coat just a little bit after, probably lunchtime, depending on how it sets. And then I basically just mix it into this one. I just take this in there, and we're good. And then the idea is when you go on the floor, you dip in, kind of do the edges with your brush, with this, and then you pour out kind of like a puddle of it, and then you roll it and spread it as thin as you can get, and then you move along another one like that, because you've got to go really quickly. I have about 30 to 45 minutes before it starts setting up in the tub. So I'm not going to be filming very well with this. You're going to get stuck in the doorway, and you're going to just see me moving back towards you. I won't have time to chit chat. But anyway, let's start working on mixing this stuff up. Alrighty, well there we go. That's the first coat done. Door shut to stop junk from blowing in on top of it. I noticed at the end, because I was getting way late, it was definitely over 45 minutes, that it was starting to peak, like it was sticking, like it was, as I rolled it around, it was leaving patterns. So yeah, once again, I'm not too worried. It'll be a good coverage and hopefully keep all the chemicals and stuff up. Another one tomorrow morning. And yeah, let's see you tomorrow. Well, already, it's the next day. We have the final coat to go on, which is the second one. It's going to be a lot easier to kind of do the math behind this. Basically, I take this, and then I pour it into this, and then I mix it for 3 minutes, and we're good to go. Overall, what I found, looking at the floor, is you can see the bits where I put it on too thin, but I think they'll be covered no problem with a second coat. And then where I was afraid it was going to kind of peak or like show brush marks, that's all gone, which is surprising because they're quite noticeable with the roller. You know how you get that kind of pattern when it's quite thick. But anyways, it's worked well, so let's get on to it. I think we're going to find this is going to be a much quicker coat. I know what I'm going to do this time. Do the edges real quick and then do the pory thing with the pole and then mush it around. But same thing, I'll have to do it really quite quickly because I think I was really close to getting too long last time. But yeah, I think it'll be good. The floor looks good for once, which is nice. So let's get on to it. All right, so the room is pretty much all done now. What I'm going to do is take all the tape up and then paint anywhere the paint comes off or where I've got scuffs. And some goofball put his hands all over the walls while he was painting the floor, so there's marks on that. So I'm just going to do a little roller kind of thing real quick. I'll reverse and put the tape on the floor and just tidy stuff up. And I'm going to clean all these pipes and then try to get the pump in because the pool's starting to go green again because it's been off for, I don't know, about 8 days now. So and the weather's starting to warm up quite a lot. So I've got to get that working. So I may not move anything in today, but we'll see. The floor nothing's being stuck on my feet. Seems really good at this point. There was a problem when you're doing this. Don't put it on too thick because if you do, there's these little teeny, I've got a little spot there and then there's a little section over here where I put it on too thick. And what's happened is the surface, because I think the surface dried first and then below it sunk down as it dried. So it's got these little teeny fine cracks, little fibrous kind of cracks. What I'm probably going to do is I'm going to take a knife and just make sure I cut the bottom of this just so it doesn't rip the floor up. I mean, it shouldn't, but why not? Well, the next thing I'm going to do is wash all these pipes and things like this because it's pretty grim. Try to get all the dust off them and blobs of paint and things like that. I'm not going to go crazy with it, but it looks a lot worse than it is. So let's clean this up and see how much better I can get it going. I'm going to put this kind of sheet thing down to see if I can get most of the water just so there's not drops of water and puddles of water on the ground. But yeah, it should be fine. This is super dry. Well, I'm just going to quickly go around and tape the floor. Just this wall, and maybe a little bit over there. And then I'm going to come around and touch up a little bit with just a bit of paint. The whole bottom really needed to be plastered, but I was thinking, if I ever want to care that much, just put baseboard in, right? Because it really needs baseboard. But it's a pool room in the garage, so who cares, right? But yeah, I'm just going to go and touch this anywhere you can kind of see the mucky paint. I do a roll over. I wiped the walls where my fingerprints are, and it just, of course, smeared everywhere. So I might roll over that, whatever. And then I'm done. Totally done. Well, got to put the pool pump in, but that's it. Yeah, let's finish this up. So I've got a little roll over here. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do this if it was in your house because it'll never match with the air sprayer, but yeah, why not? Get rid of some of the brown, make it look like it's a little better than it actually is. All right, let's put this pump right back in. Well, there we go. That's the end of this little project. The walls, once again, not perfect. I still have to do stuff over here. We have to fill the 2 big holes, one for the pool pipes and one for electrical once I get that all sorted. And, ideally I'd want to put, baseboards along the bottom and stuff like that. But once again, it's a pool room, so we fill it junk, right? So the floor overall, I've learned some good lessons on that for when I go to do the fountain, which will be shortly. And it's just don't put it too thick, otherwise it does weird cracky stuff. Otherwise it seems to be adhering very well. It's covered up a lot of mess. The walls are certainly brighter. This room is finally bright enough to be able to see in the middle of the night, which is great. So anyways, off to the next project. And if you like what you're seeing in this video and you want to keep following us along, give us a like and subscribe. Maybe this year we'll hit 2,000 people. That's kind of the goal, hopefully, but we'll see. Anyways, cheers.